Greg Jouben was a hard worker, determined to make something of himself, a goal that tragically he never fully realized. On the night of October 17, 1991, his life suddenly ended, opening a homicide case that the New York State Police still have under investigation.
Little Falls, New York, population 5,892. This historic mill town on the Mohawk River in central New York is a peaceful community with old-fashioned values and little crime. In fact, there hadn't been a homicide for 60 years. That is, until October 17, 1991, when 36-year-old Greg Jouben was shot to death in his jewelry store on East Main Street. The murder has mystified the New York State Police in the town of Little Falls for more than 4 years. On the evening of October 17, 1991, Greg's body was discovered in his basement jewelry store. He had been shot several times with a small caliber handgun, and the store had been robbed of some of its most expensive merchandise. It suspected the motive was more than just robbery. Greg Jouben was the victim of a calculated murder, according to investigator Dominic DiPiola.
Greg Jouben was not going to survive this robbery, and I think that was instilled in the perpetrator's mind from day one, as he fantasized going through the robbery. And I think the closer he actually got to the 17th of October, the more instilled it was in him that Greg Jouben was going to die.
Evidence of the plot to rob and kill Greg Jouben was discovered in the 5 floors of abandoned office space located above his store.
One of the items that we did find in the building was an item that we identify as a rig rag and grease. It would be used to protect the weapon so it would not rust. We could assume by the purchase of the rig rag and grease that this murder had been planned for about 3.5 to 4 months.
Investigators believe the killer gained access to the building months before Greg's murder. 250 pieces of evidence were collected from the building's 5 levels, including bullet casings from the murder weapon and an ID tag from a police scanner. The killer was apparently firing rounds to test police response. The murderer also had a bird's eye view of the Little Falls police station and direct access to Greg Jouben's shop.
We believe there was a lot of activity upstairs, and we believe that this access right here was a direct route for the assailant. We also know that this is the same route of travel that he took when he fled the crime scene.
Little Falls Police Detective Gary Mosier has worked very closely with senior investigator DiPiola on this case for 4 years.
Now, this room was where we believed when he exited the building, may have gotten outside the building through this area right here. As you can see, this is the window that can lead right out onto an actual rooftop of an adjoining building. During our investigation, we found some rings that were on this section of this building. And in the lower sublevel, and I believe one of the rings were found down in another lower sublevel.
Detective Mosier says the killer had an escape route planned, but believes that he may have been startled by a false alarm, which went off while he was still inside Greg's shop.
What happened was the fire department rolled, and they roll everything out of the doors down the main street, which is heading right toward the Borough building. Therefore, I thought, he may have thought that they were coming in his direction.
The killer made off with $40,000 in loose diamonds and thousands of dollars in coins and jewelry, but left behind an estimated $1 million worth of inventory.
He had 2 rather large safes. When I say large, we're talking floor safes. They were probably about 4.5, 5 feet tall. They were just chock full. There were silver bars in there. There were diamonds, various gems, and a lot of silver to be melted down later on.
Greg Jouben ran a successful business buying and selling coins and jewelry. At 36, he lived at home with his mother, was obsessed with work, and on his way to becoming a millionaire. Former business partner Kip LeQuay.
Greg was very fair and honest. He accumulated what he was able to accumulate over a lot of hard work. He would also put in a lot of extra hours. He would be there in the evenings. He would work weekends.
LeQuay says Greg had an incredible knack for the business, as well as a false sense of security.
He said he had a security system, and he felt secure with the system that he had. He never really got into details to what exactly that was, but I think overall he was very very trusting, probably too much so.
Greg's mother still lives in Little Falls, but now she lives alone.
Well, I would love to know who could have murdered somebody like Greg before I die. I would love to find out who could have done it and why. Why did they just take the jewelry, take what they wanted, and leave them?
Connie Jouben worked for Greg part-time and was expecting him home for dinner the night he was murdered.
He never told me to go home early. But that day, he told me I could go home early. So he must have been expecting somebody. Usually, he would tell me.
Investigators suspect the killer may have actually made an appointment to meet with Greg on the night of October 17th.
He was sitting behind his desk, and we feel at that point in time he was examining some piece of jewelry. And we feel that he was put in that position, and he was very comfortable not knowing that he was in harm's way.
Investigators think this piece of jewelry, which lay near Greg's body, may belong to the killer.
We feel at this point in time that Greg may have been sitting at his desk, possibly viewing this particular piece of jewelry and trying to gather the size of diamond, maybe the clarity, if it was actually anything of value or not.
Investigator D. Piola says the pin could someday be used to help identify the killer. The building on East Main Street where Greg Jouben was murdered stands empty. There is little that remains of Greg's coins and jewelry, except the memory of a devoted man who became the victim of a senseless murder.
If somebody murders a person, if they could only understand what they do to a family and a mother. It's been 4 years, and it seems like yesterday.
When we return, New York State Police try to track down a confessor to the murder of Greg Jouben. Over the years, the New York State Police have received numerous confessions to the murder of Greg Jouben. All have proven to be false, except one, which came in the form of an 18-second anonymous phone call to a crisis center in Manhattan.
He not only knew the name of the victim, he also knew exactly where the homicide took place, and even had the phone number to the Little Falls Police Department. That one person has yet to be identified, and that's the one that we're looking for at this point in time.
The call was traced to a phone booth in New York City. Investigators believe it may have been their man. If you have any information on the murder of Greg Jouben, please call the New York State Police Free Investigative Tip Line at 1-800-262-4321.
This makes so much sense, I'm surprised Americans didn't think of it a long time ago. When you party and you're using a car to get home, pick one of your group to stick with soft drinks or coffee so that person can drive. That frees up the rest of you to party as much as you like, but with the knowledge that someone stone cold sober is behind the wheel. We call it using a designated driver. But whatever you call it, it works.